Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to another episode of r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people seem to get mistaken as employees when they definitely aren't, and nobody knows how it keeps happening. Guys, I hope you're having another lovely day today, and you guys know the drill. You're about to hear some insane stories, my friends. With that said, I hope you enjoy them because I sure as heck did, and do hit that subscribe button for future tales. Guys, let's dive in. So I had a rather crappy Memorial Day weekend. Long and rather boring story short, I had a seizure and face planted my bedroom door. So after a fun ride to the hospital on backboard and neck brace, a whole bunch of tests followed. And I was admitted because it turns out my autoimmune condition is not quite being managed as well as I thought it was. It was fun times. After the first couple of days of sleeping off the concussion, I make it to the third day. At this point, I feel well enough to walk around, and even make a trip to the cafeteria downstairs to get something better than the hospital food. Now, I didn't really have much in the way of clothing. My wife had brought my favorite hoodie and clean underwear, but forgot pants of all things. So a really nice nurse scrounged up a pair of the hospital's blue scrub pants for me. I was happily free of the IV cart for the next few hours and decided to get some chocolate milk and maybe a tasty snack to treat myself and to lift my spirits a bit. But it ended up being a rather sad, frustrating affair before I could even make it on the elevator. I make it to the waiting area and the elevator lobby when a 60-year-old woman with the sourest expression on her face steps off the elevator. So I try to give her a wide berth, but Puckerface isn't having it. She marches straight up to me and gets well into my personal space and starts demanding that I take her to her son's room and give her an immediate rundown of his medical ailments. So the exchange is as follows between me and Puckerface. She says, "Finally, one of you lazy bastards is gonna take me to my son's hospital room and explain to me my baby boy's condition." Me, thinking the children's hospital is next door, says, "What?" She then says, "Oh, don't play stupid. You are not pretty enough for that. I know my son's here and I want to see him right this instant. His name's Jimmy, and I think he was brought here on Friday." Now at this point, I'm really confused and feeling really bad for the guy and say, I don't work here." She then says, "What do you mean you don't work here? You have scrubs on in a hospital. You're a nurse. Now take me to my son." So I'm starting to get irritated and sassy and said, "Dude, I'm not a nurse. Not everybody who wears scrubs is a nurse. I just didn't feel like going to the cafeteria in a gown with my ass flapping in the wind." She then says, "You are just using that as an excuse to not get in trouble for sucking at your job and being a little twit." So at this point, I hold up my wrist, including the lovely bright red allergy band, and said, "Yeah, no, I'm not a nurse. I'm a patient and I really don't have to be explaining this to you. Go find someone else who can help you, but you should probably not be such a bitch about it. I will act however I want, and you better believe that I'm gonna get your lying ass fired. I want to speak to your supervisor. You are such an unprofessional nurse. And talking back to a patient's family, your bedside manner is atrocious." So at this point, I told her that the head nurse is that way, and for the last time, I don't work here. I'm a damn patient just like your son. I told her she might want to tone it down, especially talking to nurses, as that's a good way to get thrown out by security. By this time, a couple of nurses come over. All of them have clear name badges and credentials on display, as well as these little communication devices. Puckerface storms up to the nurse and demands to be taken to her son, spouting off his name and date of birth to basically everybody on the floor, and then demands that I be fired. The head nurse looks at her and says, "She doesn't work here, and I'm gonna have to ask you to refrain from yelling and harassing people. This is a hospital, and people are trying to heal and rest." The woman says, "I understand, but this woman isn't letting me see my son, and he needs his mommy right now. She needs to be dealt with for being such a terrible, irresponsible nurse." I look at her and say, "But I'm not a nurse." So after going back and forth several minutes, Puckerface can't seem to wrap her brain around the fact that I don't actually work at the hospital. She's basically a broken record at this point, calling for me to get fired like she's forgotten why she's here in the first place. The head nurse is calm and has tried to explain it many times that I don't work here. Finally, after a couple of seconds, she quietly turns to me and says, "Hey, you're fired, okay?" I said, "Okay." She then holds the elevator for me and says, "Go on now, get on your way." So I get on the elevator and head downstairs, incredibly grateful to be away from that monstrous woman, and go collect my well-deserved prize, and text my wife about the whole thing, as she'll find it hilarious. But the story doesn't end there. As it turns out, when they look up the information for her son, who turns out to be 2 rooms down from mine, he specifically requested that his mother, under absolutely no circumstances, could be allowed to visit. So I watched her get dragged away kicking, screaming, and biting through the hospital's main lobby when I was returning from the cafeteria. The chocolate milk and cookies were twice as tasty after that. The kid turned up that evening to apologize for his mother, since news of the crazy lady spread across the floor like wildfire. He and his family were actually really cool. It looks like we're gonna be physical therapy buddies now, and we can swap crazy mom stories together. Well, that mom is definitely entitled and a little bit crazy. I can see why her son requested her to stay away from him. Listen guys, I've read a lot of these stories, and I still can't understand why people feel the need to go, "Oh, you definitely work here," when someone says they don't. Not too long ago, I was a police officer here in England. I went from a team dealing with action-packed calls, speeding around in Ford Focuses, and dealing with interesting things, to working in a team that supported a large shopping complex. We mostly dealt with shoplifting, antisocial behavior, real hard-hitting stuff. The uniform was a white shirt, black tie, and if I was out, a stab vest over the top. With one of those big pointy hats too. If I was on break though, I'd just put my normal jacket on to cover my shoulder numbers. So to a casual observer, I was just a normal person in a white shirt with a black tie. So cue the moment. Now, I had just finished dealing with paperwork from a shoplifting and had a hankering for a sandwich. I locked my vest and hat away, but left my belt of tools on, which consisted of pepper spray, cuffs, and a metal stick. I popped on my plain black jacket and ventured to the shopping complex in search of a footlong. Sandwich specified and acquired, I paid the well-known outlet and ambled to a seating area to mind my own business and to chow down. Probably no less than 5 minutes later, I clock a woman, the usual type Karen, attempting to buy a sandwich. Now, from her big arm gestures, I skillfully deduced that she wasn't happy. That's not a crime, so I went back to my sandwich. Until, of course, the voices became raised and a hand was slammed on the counter. I tucked the remnants of my sandwich in the bin and ambled over to see what the commotion was. Now, working in the team I was a well-known face in the center, and I enjoy a long sandwich. So the staff knew me and my job, so they relaxed a little, which really irritated the woman. I quickly realized that they didn't have the filling she wanted, and she was refusing to take no for an answer. I walked up to her and said, "Is everything okay here?" The woman turns and eyes me over. Now, I'm in my early 20s at the time, so she thinks that I'm a security guard. Karen says, "Oh my god, I don't need security. This little dumbass won't make my sandwich." I told her, okay, firstly, you need to calm down. Secondly, I may level up from security. Now, she did not like this. Karen says, "Oh, piss off. I just want my sandwich." She ignores me and goes back to banging her hand on the desk and gesturing wildly at the teen behind the counter. I told her again that she needs to stop that, and she rounds on me again and says, "I said, piss off. I know the management here, so you better get back to doing your damn job, or I'll get you sacked." I told her I don't care. I'm warning you that you need to stop swearing and you need to calm down. Or what? I want my sandwich, not some jumped up plastic policeman interfering. Go do your damn job somewhere else. Again, I told her to calm down. You're causing a scene and stop hitting that counter or you'll be arrested. Karen says, "Don't you dare tell me what you think. You're just a stupid wannabe cop. If you think you can arrest me, try it. Get me your boss now too." So at this point, she was slamming her palms on the sneeze guard with each word, and I think I'd been patient enough at this point. So I unzip my jacket to reveal that I'm in fact a uniformed police constable. Her eyes widen as she sees the cuffs on my belt. I said, "You want me to do my job? I'm arresting you under Section 5 of the Public Order Act. The arrest is necessary to prevent injury to others and damage to property. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defense." Now, I had no intention of cuffing her. I was twice her size, so not necessary. Instead, I steered her sputtering to a table and sat her down as I called for a car to pick us up. After 30 minutes of her refusing to believe that she'd done anything wrong, I eventually gave her a penalty notice to dispose of the matter. So her little sandwich swearfest ended up costing her £80 instead. Well, gee, Karen, way to go. All this over a freaking sandwich shop running out of ingredients. Some people really do lose their minds when they go hungry. I love how Karen just kept telling him to do his job, not realizing that he was an actual constable. And he did have the power to place her under arrest. What a super satisfying story, my friends. I had reported to work on this particular Monday, where I'm the site supervisor for an armed security account, only to discover that the blasted idiots that worked the night shift had not only left me with an empty coffee pot, which is a mortal sin, but had entirely cleaned me out of coffee, leaving me an empty container devoid of my much-needed morning caffeine. The inconsiderate so-and-sos. Grumbling, I go off to the market to buy some caffeinated goodness, to keep my heart beating throughout my busy day. Mind you, I am in my uniform, which means black pants, dress shirt with my badge, and various security emblems. I also had my duty belt, with firearm, baton, handcuffs, etc, etc. Now, for the sake of those squeamish folk out there that go all white in the face when they see a firearm, I have also donned a windbreaker, with the word security written across the back in 6-inch high yellow letters. In other words, I looked nothing like any of the folk who worked at this market, whose uniform consisted entirely of a green apron. Now mind you, I probably could have handled this better, but I was grumpy. It was a Monday morning without coffee after all. So I'm standing just inside the door of the market reading the chalkboard where they have written their menu, when this entitled wench on her cell phone walks up to me and tries to hand me a slip of paper. Okay, so I'm a bit confused, but I take it and give it a look. But as soon as I do, the entitled wench makes a little shooing motion and walks away and sits down on a bench by the door. She never says a word to me, doesn't even really look at me, barely acknowledges my existence, and just walks off. So I'm kind of annoyed, you might say. So I look at the piece of paper and it's a list of, you guessed it, groceries. So I wander over and politely inquire as to what exactly this is and why she had seen fit to hand it to me. The entitled wench says, "It's my grocery list, of course. You need to fetch them for me. I'm in a hurry and can't be bothered. I'm on a very important phone call." And again, she does the shooing motion. Now, I've been going to this market for 5 years, and I can assure you they don't fetch your groceries for you. So after some consideration, I very carefully rolled her list into a tight little ball, dropped it on her lap, and loudly growled at her to get off her lazy ass to do her own damn shopping. I then turned around and walked off. I can hear her screeching out something behind me, but I just ignore it and keep on walking. Now, at this point, I'm seriously thinking that the entitled wench will take the hint, see the Dayglow letters on my jackets, and buy a clue. But oh no, the entitled wench is not that smart. She instead chases me down and starts yelling about how she's gonna get me fired and I need to fetch her damn groceries right now. I'm trying to remain calm. I politely but forcefully tell her again, very carefully, that I don't work here, to do your own damn shopping, and leave. So thinking that's the end of it, off I go to get a cup of wonderful hot coffee at the cafe, and then move on to the Isle of Heaven, where I'm busily perusing their fine section of lovely roasted goodness, when who should appear but the entitled wench with a gentleman in tow. She's loudly berating him about his lazy workers and demanding I be fired on the spot. The poor gentleman looks confused at me and then at her and informs her that he doesn't work here. We don't employ security, ma'am. So being a bit of a jerk, I do wave at her, give her a big smile, and agree with him. The woman absolutely loses it. She goes completely insane. She starts screaming that I need to fetch her damn groceries right now, or she's gonna get us all fired. That she's an important person and how we will regret treating her this way, blah blah blah. The gentleman finally gets a word in edgewise again and informs her that I don't work here and that I don't have to do anything for her. So this is where I can see a dim little light bulb go off in her head, and I can see a glimmer. It's tiny, but it's there, and understanding begins to dawn in her eyes. But the dim light is however quickly squashed by her overinflated sense of entitlement as she promptly replies in the snottiest voice possible. I kid you not, with, "Well, he's obviously a menial of some sort, so make him." So to say this got me a tad riled up is perhaps an understatement. So I shoved a one-finger salute into her face and told her to emphatically go screw herself. The gentleman quickly got between us and loudly told her, in no uncertain terms, that 1, again, I did not work here, And 2, she needed to get the hell out of his store. Right now. The entitled wench literally screams at the top of her lungs. No words, just rage, and starts to demand to see someone in charge so she could get us all fired. And somebody better get her damn groceries. She also said she was gonna sue us all, and that we did not know how important she was. So the gentleman, who I had naturally assumed was the manager, promptly got right back in her face and yelled over her that he was the owner. His family had owned the place for 20 years, and they had never, in all that time, done someone shopping for them. Ever. He then grabs her by the arm and literally drags her off towards the front of the store. At that point, I was just shaking my head in disbelief, but I just went ahead and made my selection of fine coffees, and wandered over to stand in line to pay for it. As I'm there at the register, the owner comes up to me and actually apologized for the entitled wench's behavior, and we share a WTF moment. Now, you would think that this was the end of it. I mean, it was crazy, but weird stuff happens, people are idiots, whatever. But oh no, dear readers, it would appear that we had both underestimated the depths of the entitled wench's craziness. Because as we walked through the door to go outside, who was there waiting for us? The entitled wench. It turns out that she had actually called the police on us, and the woman was out there screaming at the officer demanding that we be arrested for not serving her. How she wanted us both fired, and she was gonna sue, and that someone had better get her damn groceries right now, damn it. My jaw dropped. I don't mind saying it, but I was beyond shocked. I honestly started to laugh at this point. The lady was certifiably nuts. So because of my job, we happened to work closely with the local PD, so I actually recognized the officer that responded, and gave Officer Betsy a wave when she looked at me. She gave me a grin and walked over, asking me exactly what the hell was going on. We both gave our side of the story, and the owner asked that she be removed from the property, please, as she was at this point causing a scene. So Betsy just rolled her eyes, walked over, and told the entitled wench that she needed to leave right now, immediately, or she would be charged with trespassing. Now, you ever have that moment where you can just see something bad start to happen, but your mind just can't quite believe that it's actually occurring? Well, I saw it start, clear as day, as the entitled wench rears back and starts to go off again, and yep, there it was. She actually jammed her finger into Officer Betsy's sternum. Not once, but twice. And there might have been a third time, but Officer Betsy at that point had picked her up, flipped her over, and dropped the entitled wench on her head. She landed on top of her, had her handcuffed in record time, got back up, and opened the door. She slid the entitled wench into the back of her car and slammed the door on her. And we all just stood there shaking our heads in total disbelief as the entitled wench started to scream and thrash about and kick at the windows of the squad car. She was still doing it as Officer Betsy drove off to the station too. I saw Officer Betsy later on that day, and she told me that the entitled wench was still throwing a fit when they got to the station, and she fought the officers there as well, until they ended up stuffing her into a control chair. She was later transported to the hospital for a psych eval. No idea what happened to her after that. So that's my I don't work here, lady. I hope you enjoyed. Oh boy, that was a wild roller coaster ride, my friends. I wonder what would have happened if OP wasn't there. She would have found some poor employee and berated them until they did her bidding. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our I don't work here, lady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. And as always, thank you for hanging out with me today. If you guys missed the last episode of I Don't Work Here, Lady, I will link it right here. An idiot slaps OP for not helping him in a bookstore, and he had no idea it would cost him his son. Oof. Check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.